Okay, like I said, so I guess everyone can hear me. I don't have to use my NCO voice. So we're here at the monument dedicated to Lt Friedrich Lengfeld. And to get into the story about him, which I know many of you probably already know about this story, to understand the background of this helps to understand of what is happening in this area at the time. So that as we came from before, and as David Miles was giving us an awesome recollection of the detrucking area for the 12th Infantry Regiment, they get detrucked in that area where we were before. They moved to that area at the last second under radio silence on November 6th, and they arrive in the area where we were before previously at about 2 in the morning on November 7th, replacing elements of the 109th unit for unit and taking over their foxholes that some of us just saw over there. So they fought through this area and came to this area, had some very hard fighting that David talked to us about last night around the 11th and 12th, were some pretty hard days for them. On the 11th, or around the 12th, behind you on the other side of the tree line over there is an old, or was a hunting house that is still there, and there was a lot of fighting over that hunting house. Where you're standing now in the cemetery, as well as behind me, was the minefield, the large minefield that was a real thorn in the side for the 12th Regiment. And like David said, elements were on one side of the minefield to my left and behind most of you over here, and the 3rd Battalion was trying to swing around in that vicinity. And while they were doing that, at one point a soldier had hit a mine and was stuck in the minefield. And this soldier was lying there for a day or two screaming for help, and it got to the point where the Germans on the other side, elements of 2nd Company, 275th Fusilier Battalion, which Lengfeld was the commander of at the time, heard this soldier screaming. And finally were like, well, you know what? Lengfeld says, let me put a team together of medics. I'm going to go out and help this guy because we don't want to hear him screaming anymore. So we're going to go help him out. So on the other side of the field, they had a lane. In front of their machine guns was part of the minefield. And this lane was a lane for them to access the minefield. So he uses this lane with his group of medics, and they go out. And as he's crossing the street, down in the vicinity, down the road here where the bus station is today, is the vicinity about where it happened, give or take. And as he crossed this road, he stepped on a mine which dropped him and made him wounded. And he was in the process of going to the soldier, the American soldier that was wounded, and unfortunately he stepped on a mine and had to get evacuated by his own medics. He was taken back to the aid station, and eventually within about 24 hours or so, he died of his wounds. So it was one of the only, or it is one of the only monuments dedicated to a German soldier erected by Americans. And this was erected by the association, by members like Bob Babcock, who's the president of the association, in honor of this German officer. And from then on, the 12th still had a rough fight within this area. If you look across the street, you see all these fields. These fields would have been woods. There's actually an interesting photo of a M28 or a M29 Weasel, which is the track vehicle they used for supplies and moving wounded, which was like one of the only vehicles that worked decently in the forest and all the mud. Well, that vehicle, late in the battle, had hit a mine and flipped over on the side of the road. And in that photo, you can see that, and you can see what the trees look like. You see all these tree stumps or tree trunks with no tops on them from all the artillery. So it gives you an idea of what the fight looked like and how hard it was and difficult at this time. So that's the story about Lengfeld.
So this was where Wilde Sau was then?
Yeah, right over here. Okay. Now, if you look back in this direction, that's another famous area that is talked about in a lot of the reports for the 12th, which is Purple Heart Lane. It was over there, and a lot of guys from 3rd Battalion were wounded in that area from all the artillery. In this direction is where, when David gave his presentation, he talked about the 2nd Battalion where they got cut off. That's in that vicinity. And if you go further that way, you have the Weißerweh Valley. And that's where the salient came in, was over here. That was a real thorn in the side of the 12th. On the opposite side of that valley was where the 1st Battalion was. So it really gives you an idea of how spread out the 12th was, and how Luckett had a lot of trouble trying to solidify the situation and try to get his unit back together. It came to a point where he confided to Barton and said, you know, I'm working for Coda right now at the 28th, but I don't know what to do, or we're trying to fix this situation. And Barton says to him, you know what? Knock it off. Don't worry about it. Forget the objectives. Save your regiment. And that's what he did. He sends his elements of his 1st Battalion around the salient to come in and support the line and eventually break through. And like David said, other companies got caught up and surrounded again, but eventually they're able to pull those companies out, pull back towards this area along this trail here, and set up a new line. So if you were to walk along these fire breaks here, you'll see a lot of foxholes from those positions still today.
So is this north?
Yeah, this is north this way. And they were attacking this way. Questions? Anybody? That's all I got.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Jared.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
What's up, Jared?
When are you going to write a book?
Yeah.
I've been saying that for
I told you.
years.
When the Army gives me time.